Hey guys, what's up? Nick here once again, and today I'm going to give you guys 5 reasons why you should upgrade to the Steam Deck OLED. So let's get right into it. I want to give a quick little disclaimer at the beginning of this video. I have already done a full comparison of the OLED versus the original LCD Steam Deck on my channel. I'll have a link right directly to it in the description below if you want to go into a more in-depth look at the differences between the two devices. Also, I totally understand why there would be different reasons why somebody would want to upgrade and why somebody wouldn't want to upgrade for a new Steam Deck OLED. This video is in no way, shape, or form meant to criticize anybody who doesn't think that upgrading is worth it, or that your budget might not be as large as somebody else's. So I wanted to get that out on the floor right away, that this video is in no way, shape, or form meant to offend anybody or make you think that, oh, because I have an LCD, I am now inferior and I need to upgrade. So starting out at number 1, let's get the obvious elephant out of the room. The new display. This is by far the biggest upgrade to the Steam Deck OLED. It's literally in the name. Not only is it a better, brighter OLED display compared to the old LCD, but it's also a 7.4-inch display this time around. So the bezels are a little bit smaller, both on the sides and on the bottom and the top, and it really does show. Now, I don't have my Steam Deck LCD anymore. I did end up selling it because I didn't see a reason to have it around anymore because I have the OLED to take its place. But if you want to see a full comparison between the two devices, link in the description below. Not only is it a bigger display, it is a little bit clearer as well, being that it is OLED. No, it's not a higher resolution, but it is 90 Hertz now for the refresh rate, over 60 Hertz from the original. And in game, that 90 Hertz makes a big difference. Sadly, on camera, whether you're watching it on YouTube or anywhere else, you will not see a difference between a 90 Hertz display and a 60 Hertz display. It's something that only the human eye can detect, and trust me, it is a big difference, and it is a massive upgrade. Not only that, but this also supports HDR, which just looks phenomenal, depending on the content that you're watching, whether that's HDR content or if you're playing a game that supports HDR. It does make a massive difference with the color accuracy and really accentuating those dark blacks and browns that you'll see really vividly with the OLED. And now with the OLED, we also have 1000 nit peak brightness, which is wonderful for HDR. So what that means, it doesn't necessarily say that this brightness slider will bring you to 1000 nits at all times, but it is still a little bit brighter, up to 600 nits compared to the 500 we had on the original LCD. But you will reach up to 1000 nits in certain situations when you're watching HDR content. But trust me, at full brightness alone, this thing is still insanely bright, way more than you'd ever need. And it's really good for outdoor viewing. So if you are in an area where overhead lighting is casting shadows and reflections on your screen, turning up the brightness just takes those away almost immediately, and it looks really good for outdoor viewing. But yeah, the display is better, of course, across the board. Whether you're playing games, watching content on it, doesn't matter. The display is just overall better. Even the text looks a little bit more clearer, a little bit more crisp, and that's all thanks to that amazing OLED technology. I'm not going to go over all the tech mumbo jumbo, what's the biggest difference between an OLED and LCD, but it is one of those things that sadly, just like the refresh rate, it's impossible to show on camera. You will just have to see this in person. I've heard that some Steam Decks are now showing up at Best Buy, which is really cool. So if you can get to a local Best Buy, go check it out in person, or just ask to see an OLED television versus an LCD. They'll gladly show you them, and you for yourself can see the differences in OLED technology. So yes, the screen alone, in my opinion, is worth an upgrade. Moving on to number 2 this is probably the biggest one in my opinion, is the battery life. My goodness, the battery life on the OLED is so much better than on the original LCD. And I was thinking about it too. I was like, well, my LCD Steam Deck was about a year old, so lithium-ion batteries, they do degrade over time. The longer you use them, the more your battery is going to drain faster. So I couldn't really do a head-to-head test to really fairly accurately say that the battery life is better on the OLED. However, my wife's Steam Deck, which is an LCD model, is only a couple months old. It's relatively new, and hers is the same battery life as my LCD model was before I sold it. And so that really showed me right there that yes, I can do an accurate representation of the OLED versus the LCD in terms of battery life. And this thing is easily 30, if not 40% more efficient battery than the LCD model. Now, in actual practice, what does that necessarily mean? So on the original LCD model, they were rating the battery at about 2 hours if you were lucky playing AAA titles, or you could get up to 8 hours if you're doing anything else, like indie titles or emulation or just watching YouTube or whatever. And that was decent. It was definitely good enough for traveling and stuff like that. But if you wanted to do anything outside of that realm, like play a AAA game, for instance, you were pretty much glued to a wall. And for most people, it's probably not a big issue. I mean, even for myself, if I was to be honest, I always have a charger next to me, whether it's at home or I have a car charger or I bring it with me if I'm at my hotel or whatever. It doesn't matter. So I always can charge it if it got to that dire need. However, I'm one of those people that when I play or use a portable device, I want to use it portably, and I don't want to have that anxiety in the back of my mind telling me I need to always be close to a wall outlet, because if you use this without a wall outlet, you're only going to be able to play it for 30 minutes. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but it's one of those feelings in the back of your mind where since getting the OLED, it's been about a week now, I literally have not had that thought once in my mind. I have been able to play games and switch between them without having to charge the device in between switching games. Last night, for instance, I swapped between Madden, Binding of Isaac, Resident Evil 4. I even played some Village and some Forza. Like, I played a ton of different games last night. Played for at least 2 hours. It was maybe a little over that even. And I still had over 40% battery life when I was done. And I started at 100%. So that was pretty remarkable for me. Like, switching between some AAA titles, some AA titles, and some indie titles. It really blew my mind seeing that I could do all of that for over 2 hours and still have 40% battery remaining, which on the Steam Deck OLED, that's a good another hour, hour and a half with a AAA title. So yeah, if battery life is a really big concern for you on your current Steam Deck, I would highly recommend just upgrading to the OLED for the battery life alone. Clearly, this can change over time. Being that this is a brand new device, the actual battery inside is brand new, and over time, lithium-ion batteries, as I've already stated, can wither away and get worse the more you charge them, the more you use them. So only time will tell if this battery will hold up, but it is a larger battery. It's a 50 watt-hour battery compared to 40 watt-hours in the original. And not only that, of course, with the internal new processor, that's a 6 nanometer processor, it's more efficient and it doesn't run as hard on the device, so that also helps with battery life. And OLED panels themselves take up less energy, so there's a lot going on here with the OLED to help with battery life, and it really does show. Number 3, and this is one that I really did not expect to ever say in a video like this, talking about the OLED, especially a mid-gen refresh. This is not a Steam Deck 2. Some people have gotten that kind of confused, thinking this is the next-gen Steam Deck, and no, it's not. This is definitely just a half-gen upgrade, if you will, kind of like how right now the PlayStation 5 came out with the slim PS5s. It's that same realm of upgrades. And with that, my number 3 is that this has better performance than the original one. And that's mainly because of the new RAM that's installed with the OLEDs. It has the same processor, just a little bit smaller and more efficient, like I stated before. That doesn't mean it necessarily runs better, it takes less power to run. It has the same SSD installed, same GPU. The really only big difference internally is the RAM. So it has the same brand of RAM and the same 16 gigabytes of DDR5, but it's at a higher megahertz. It's 6400 megahertz versus I think the original LCD was 5400. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong on that one in the comments, but it is a significant boost in RAM speed. And with the custom processor and GPU installed on all of the Steam Decks, they actually use that RAM to its full potential to get the best speed possible out of the device. Where on a regular PC, like a Windows PC, for instance, RAM is more so just used for multitasking purposes and not necessarily used too heavily for gaming performance, whereas on the Steam Deck, it's a much needed piece of hardware. So what does that necessarily mean if I was to chalk it all up into one sentence? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a ton of extra performance or boost in your games compared to the original. Like, you're not going to go from getting an average of 30 FPS in a game on the LCD to going over 90 FPS on the OLED. It's something like that. But you will notice a very big consistency upgrade with the OLED in terms of its performance. And what I mean by that, with the LCD, I had situations where I was playing a game and my frames would kind of fluctuate from like 30 FPS to 50 FPS down to 25 FPS, and it would just fluctuate like crazy, a big roller coaster. And don't get me wrong, you're still going to get fluctuations on the OLED. However, it's very much fixed, like it's way less severe. So in that same game, running the same settings, same everything, I would be pretty much at a steady 40 to 42 FPS, and it would fluctuate between those. It wouldn't really go above or below that, which is really awesome to see. So And obviously that stuff will change over time with updates and stuff to the software, and that will also be coming to the LCD as well. But just for right now, most games feel a little bit more stable on the OLED, and again, that has to do with that upgraded RAM, which was really great to see. Even though you're not going to get a massive boost in performance over the original LCD, I can still say it's a big enough upgrade internally to be noticeable, especially in the menus. I've noticed just the menus overall load a lot quicker on the OLED with better animations than they did on the original LCD. So if that's anything that matters to you, and again, if you're just getting this as your first device, like you don't even have an LCD and you're just going to buy an OLED, obviously you're not going to know the difference here, and it's just going to feel like a regular fluid interface. But I can tell you from firsthand experience going from the LCD to the OLED, it is a pretty remarkable upgrade with the fluidity of the operating system on the OLED compared to the original LCD. And not only that, but you do get a little bit faster downloads on the OLED as well because of the more improved Wi-Fi chip enabled. It's a Wi-Fi 6E chip internally instead of a Wi-Fi 5, which we got on the original LCD. So that is also really cool. Obviously, you're not going to be taking advantage of that unless you have a Wi-Fi 6 router. But if you do, this is an awesome upgrade for better, faster downloads. Your games will download and install a lot quicker. And yeah, all the above, and it is noticeable. Moving on to number 4, and this is another big one that, again, I did not expect when I purchased the OLED. It's just something that I've noticed since using it. It is a much lighter console compared to the original, and this actually is really nice. So if you guys are a fan of the channel, if you've been here for a while, you may have saw my unboxing video of the OLED, and in my unboxing, I actually wasn't too astonished with the weight of the device. I legitimately thought it felt about the same weight. Compared to the LCD, it didn't feel much different, but putting them side by side and doing a full direct comparison and using this for over a week now, I can easily say this is a much lighter device in the hand. And what does that necessarily mean, and why does that matter? It makes it just more portable. It's so much easier to lug around and to play games for longer periods of time without getting that strain on your wrists or on your arms, which I did get with the original Steam Deck and especially with other devices like the Legion Go. So really awesome to see that they were able to not only put a bigger battery in here and a better display, but make it lighter overall, which is really extremely cool. And not only that, but the fans are also quieter. I'm going to kind of include that with being more portable, because you can be in areas where if you need to be quiet, like a library, you don't have to worry about this rearing super loudly and annoying people around you. So that's really cool. So yeah, the internal fans are much larger this time around, so better cooling, more efficient, but they also are much quieter because they're larger. I did do a side-by-side comparison of the sound of the fans on the OLED versus the original. I'll play that clip here just so you guys don't have to go to the other video if you don't want to. And hopefully with that clip, you get a good example as to the difference in the sound quality. I gotta be honest, the original Steam Deck wasn't that loud with its fans, but yes, if you're playing AAA titles, they ramped up pretty loud and you could hear them. But with the OLED, man, I can play a AAA game for an hour and you wouldn't even know this thing is on. Like, it's that much quieter. And moving on to my 5th and final reason why I feel like the upgrade of the OLED is definitely worth it. And this is 2 things that I did not expect to be actually better than the LCD, and that much more better, by the way, is the touchscreen and the haptics themselves. Now, on the original LCD Steam Deck, I truthfully didn't have many issues with the haptics and or the touchscreen, but the thing is, I never used the touchscreen on my original LCD Steam Deck because I honestly felt it wasn't really that responsive. I felt it wasn't that good to use. It didn't feel intuitive, mainly because the actual software shadowed it so much. And for good reason, because the software is so good, you can literally do everything without a touchscreen with just using your D-pad or the analog. And even when you're in desktop mode, you got 2, count it, 2 touchpads. So it kind of makes the touchscreen feel sick and fiddle or just kind of like an afterthought. And it really did feel like that on the LCD. However, with the new Steam Deck OLED, the touchscreen is so accurate and responsive because of the new polling rate that it feels so much better to not only type on, but just to use as its own, like, I don't know, just UI, like you're using a tablet. So I gotta hand it to Valve for really upgrading something that didn't necessarily need it, because again, everything else is so good and usable and fluid with everything else. You don't need the touchscreen. So it's just cool that they were able to integrate this and make it that much better, to where I've actually ended up noticing myself that I use a touchscreen more often than not, just getting around the UI and clicking on things and typing, where I used to use the touchpads for typing with the keyboard, but now I just use the touchscreen. Yes, there is going to be fingerprints. That is annoying. I will admit I'm not really a fan of fingerprints myself, but I always have a microfiber cloth near me, so I just wipe out the screen when I'm done. And with the touchscreen, of course, we got better haptics, and that's included in the touchpads. I can't show you this on screen, sadly. This is another situation where you're just going to take my word for it, but the touchpads feel so much better than on the original. And don't get me wrong, if you have an LCD Steam Deck right now, you're probably telling me, what do you mean they feel great as they are? And I agree. They felt amazing with the original LCD Steam Deck. They blew my mind with how they could roll and follow your touch input on the touchpads. And they even had some form of like acceleration, if that makes sense. Like you could flick the mouse and it would scroll across even when you let go. And yeah, it's really cool. And it's just that much better this time around. And it really is a significant upgrade. So yeah, pretty cool, pretty insane. And I like that they upgraded things that really didn't need to be there or didn't need upgrades. But they threw them in there anyway, because they were like, you know what, we're going to give you your money's worth. And speaking of that, I do have some bonus points as well, not just out of my top 5, but these are a little bit smaller increases that I think are still significant upgrades, but just not big enough to me to where I would personally buy a Steam Deck OLED over the original just for these situations. However, I feel that they are important enough to include here. The biggest one is the price. This thing is actually cheaper than the original LCD Steam Deck. Let me explain. Yes, the top tier model is technically the same price as the top tier model was last time. However, we're getting more storage. So the top tier Steam Deck OLED is going for $650 USD, but you get 1 terabyte of internal storage, where on the LCD, the top tier was 512 gigabytes, which is actually the model I have here, which is now the mid tier. So it's kind of confusing, but the 512 gigabyte is now a mid tier OLED for $550. And then they shifted down the original LCD model to $400 for a 256 gigabyte internal storage. So Valve went out of their way not only to upgrade the system for many different reasons that I didn't even explain in this video, but on top of that, they made the device the same price, which ends up technically being cheaper because you're getting more for the money. So yeah, Valve did not need to do that, and they could have easily just said, yeah, this is $700, this is $800, and people like me probably still would have went on and bought it and upgraded. But the fact that this is technically the same price as the original Steam Deck when it came out is astonishing to me. It's absolutely insane, and Valve should be applauded for that. Next, I already talked about the better Wi-Fi connectivity internally for better downloads, but it also has much better Bluetooth. It's 5.3 connectivity this time compared to the 5.0 in the original. In everyday use, you're probably not going to notice that much difference, but I can easily tell you the connectivity and the range is a lot better on this one versus my original LCD model. My PS5 controllers, for instance, would disconnect all the time on the original one. Have not had it happen once on the OLED, and just sound quality in general sounds a lot better through Bluetooth headphones. The menu buttons have also been upgraded slightly, so they still have that same kind of like flat texture to them. They don't have any rise off the device like the start and select buttons up here, which is kind of a bummer. I wish they would have given them a little bit of a bump up there, but thankfully the actual initiation of pressing the button is a lot better. It just feels more tactile, more clicky, and it gives you that nice resistance, letting you know that you have pressed the button compared to on the previous model, the original LCD. These buttons were terrible. They really brought down the overall quality of the device. So good to see that they did upgrade those, and they are much better. These speakers have also been upgraded as well, but it's not a huge significant change. That's why I didn't put it in my top 5 reasons. They are better. They're a little bit more bassy, a little bit better quality overall, and a little bit louder. But the speakers on the LCD were amazing as well. So yeah, they're better, but they didn't need to be. And the last thing, which I think is pretty significant, all original accessories of your LCD, yes, will fit and work just fine on the OLED, which is not only awesome for just third-party manufacturers to continue selling their products for both devices now, but also just for the consumer, because you don't have to go out of your way to purchase brand new docks or brand new cases or screen protectors. Everything will work the exact same that it did on the original Steam Deck as it will on the OLED. This grip case that I have on here actually is brought over from my LCD model because it has a built-in kickstand, so it's a must for me. I actually just ordered the kill switch case from Dbrand, so if you guys want to see a review on that, I'll make a video of it, but otherwise I'm just going to have it in future videos, and I am excited to try that out. But yeah, it's cool that I was able just to swap this over without having to get any new accessories or go out of my way to find stuff like that. So again, good on Valve for making a lighter, more portable device without actually changing the dimensions or messing around with the buttons to where old accessories wouldn't fit anymore. So that is it essentially for my top 5 reasons why you should upgrade to the Steam Deck OLED. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if there's anything I didn't go over, more than likely I already did in my Steam Deck OLED versus the original LCD that I will have in the description below. Highly recommend you check that video out as soon as this one ends so you can get a full representation of what this thing can do. But I am absolutely still in love with my OLED. I've been using it every single day since I got it, which honestly I can't say the same for the LCD Steam Deck. I played it for like a couple days, gave it up for about a month, came back to it, played it again for a week, and then kind of did that every other time they had an update, but otherwise I never really touched it. Where the OLED is just such a better display, it's such a better experience that I just can't seem to put it down. I've put so many games on here that I never attempted on the Steam Deck prior that I'm absolutely in love with. So with that, leave a like, show your support as always, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We'll hopefully see you in the next one. Peace out, everybody.